we don't talk about money in our families. It used to be considered poor taste to talk about what you have and what your plans are. And a lot of parents don't do that with their kids. And I think we need to get over that hesitancy.
Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with Kevin Lyles about how to discover the new you when you retire. Now, of course, if there was a new you at retirement, there's maybe an old you. I don't know if we want to use the word old, but a former you, I suppose. Tell me a little bit about the former you, Kevin. What did you do for your main working career?
I was a corporate attorney. Worked for the same law firm for 31 years.
And of course, you're not doing that now. When did you realize it was time to retire?
You know, I had sort of planned to retire. I retired at age 55, and that was under our partnership agreement. That was when you could retire. That was the earliest you could retire with full pension benefits. And I just decided I wanted to do that for my own health and other reasons, just to have some more freedom.
Yeah, that freedom is something I hear quite a bit, maybe even looking forward to retirement. I just want that freedom, or in retirement, I've got that freedom. Before you retired, what did you think your retirement life would look like?
You know, I didn't give it much thought. I was focused on the numbers, as many retirees and about to retire folks are. I was just worried, do I have enough money? Have I thought about all the financial issues? And I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about it. I certainly had not planned on becoming a retirement planner and retirement coach, which is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I suppose part of that, becoming a retirement coach, probably came out of your self-discovery of what life became in retirement, what you wanted it to be in retirement. I was connected with you through a book, The Retirement Collective. There's some shared wisdom from top retirement coaches. So congrats on being named a top retirement coach.
Thank you.
But to get there, I think a bit of it was your own journey on there. And you shared some different tips of here's kind of discover who you are as a retiree, what your new life might be like. Can you share with us those 3 tips?
Sure. Let me back up one step before that and sort of, because you're right, it was my own journey. I didn't realize before I retired, I would need a new identity and to replace that work identity. And I think the harder you work during your career, a career is not just about making money and being a provider for your family. It also gives you a sense of accomplishment. And I think we still need that after we retire, or you're not going to remain significant or relevant or useful to anyone. So for me, that was sort of what made me realize I need to do something else. I'm 55 years old. I'm no longer practicing law. What's going to replace that part of my life? Some other things change. Your relationship with your family, with your kids. You know, our kids were getting out of college, going off on their own. So we became empty nesters. So that's all changing. Your parents are aging. They may need help. You may need to become a caregiver. All those things tend to happen at the same time. And you realize you're really no longer middle-aged. You know, you're starting to look a little bit beyond middle age. So all of that, I think, sort of attacks your own identity. And so I decided to develop a replacement for my work identity. And the 3 tips you're talking about, one, I think you want to look at what are the unique skills and gifts that you have? What makes you you? You know, what gives you the most joy? For some of us, as an example, as a corporate lawyer, I didn't have a great opportunity to use humor. And yet I always thought that was a part of my personality that I wanted. So I wanted to focus on that a little more in retirement. I'm certainly not a stand-up comedian, but I like to be silly sometimes. And as a corporate lawyer, I had to sort of hide that part of my personality away. And I think a lot of people have that experience. You know, some of the things that maybe you really enjoyed that your family, your closest friends most admire about you, you have to push them down when you become a professional or an executive or whatever your career was. So it's find those things about yourself that you want to emphasize?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's a big part of it. And as a corporate lawyer, I imagine there is a lot of research and explaining and things that have go into that persuasiveness, I assume, as well. So it's not just you're probably taking some of your corporate gifts, adding on some of your personality gifts to it. But what do you do next?
Yeah. So I think it's a good idea to decide what is your primary purpose going to be in retirement. And that can be something that is related, in my case now, it's the retirement coaching that I'm doing in retirement. And that had, for me, several aspects of that corporate life that I had before. I used to speak a lot in public, speak at conferences. So I enjoy speaking in front of people. I I enjoyed counseling clients and helping them solve their problems as a lawyer. And so now I do that with people thinking about retiring and early in their retirement life when they have trouble making that transition into retirement. So what I tell people, and it's the second of those three tips you talked about, it is figure out what your primary purpose is going to be. It doesn't have to be at all work related. A lot of people, they're tired, the farthest thing from their mind is taking on another job or even on a part-time basis. A lot of people love that, and that's great. But for other people, they may want to look at some different roles to replace that work identity. Maybe it's being a good parent, good spouse, grandparent. I'm a new grandfather, and really enjoying that aspect of retirement. That's an identity that I love to talk about now. So think about what you're going to do, and to me, it's all about making a contribution. How can you contribute to the people in your life, your loved ones, your friends, maybe just acquaintances in your community, the people you run into every day? How can you make a difference in their lives? Or it can be about a place, your community. How can you help your community? It can be a thing, a cause that you like, whatever it is, whatever appeals to you and it's going to help you get up in the morning. That's sort of what your primary purpose is going to be. And I think that's a great place to hang an identity to replace your work identity.
Yeah, you got it. It's the three parts of it is focus on your unique gifts. So it's kind of like who you are. Focus on your primary purpose in retirement, which is kind of like why you want to get up in the morning. And then the third one is find ways to use those gifts to fulfill your purpose. It's kind of like, well, what do you do then, right? You know who you are, why you want to get up in the morning. Well, here go about. Here's what you want to do in retirement. And I see the Rock Retirement Club behind you, that placard there. You're part of that. Tell me a little bit about that. I think that's part of your primary purpose in retirement.
It really is, and I've loved it. I joined it in 2018, the year after I retired. Roger Whitney, who's another financial advisor and a podcaster, has the Retirement Answer Man podcast. He started a virtual club, and we're up to over 1,000 members now, and we bring in probably 300 new members a year or so, and they're all first want to get their financial house in order and then start thinking about some of these non-financial things like identity and purpose and meaning, leisure, caregiving, all those kinds of things that retirees face. This club is designed to give people the resources to help them do those things. And so I've been a coach in that since 2019 and really enjoying it. And you're right, it's become my purpose. And as I mentioned, it allows me some of the gifts I have, counseling people, talking to people. It lets me use those gifts to continue to feel like I'm making a contribution.
Yeah, and with that, he's over 1,000 people in the club. You've probably talked to a good number of them. Give me some ideas or examples of where some folks have gone wrong in their retirement journey. Like they were doing something and they realized, oh my goodness, this is not working out.
Yeah. The hardest thing for a lot of people, a lot of our members were great savers throughout their lives. And part of their identity was being very frugal. We have a number of members who were in the FIRE community, the financial independence, retire early community. And spending money once you're retired is hard for these folks. They're used to saving money. And what we try to do is help them develop skills to understand, first of all, money is just a tool. Once you're retired, when you're still in your career and you're still accumulating money, your goal is to grow that pot as much as you can, right? To provide for you later in life. Once you're retired, that's no longer your goal. Your goal is for that to support the best life that you can have. And so we help people. I just got an email this week from a member of the club who said they had just booked. We're having our annual in-person conference later this week in Grapevine, Texas. And this member said, my husband and I, we booked first class tickets, and we've never done that in our lives. We've always taken water, taken snacks onto the plane. We're going to sit in first class. And that's a small example. I think it cost them, I think she said maybe $300 or $400 for the two of them to upgrade to first class. That's the kind of small victories we try to help the members with, as well as the big ones that you're familiar with as a retirement planner. And that is just making sure your resources are aligned to support you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I suppose it's a good problem to have, a first world type problem, right? You end up saving so well that you almost have too much money. What do I do with it? And it's almost not just the too much money. You probably have enough money. It's just like you said, you spend so much time putting money in. It's tough to turn around and start bringing it out. I've got one client I'm thinking of right now where they're ready to retire at a certain age. They didn't retire for 3 or 4 years afterwards. Although being ready to retire made going into work feel a lot easier, knowing they could just quit anytime they wanted. But then, of course, working 3 or 4 years and the market went up 3 or 4 years, it was a good thing for their portfolio. But they were the saver. They were always calling me up once a year saying, well, how do we move, 10 grand into savings instead of let it sit in checking at zero, right? That kind of stuff. They called me up one day. They said, I have a success story. I want to tell you what we just did. They had their mom was turning 9 years old. So like everyone was coming into town and they're thinking, well, where do we host, 20 people, get the food and all that stuff. And then they thought, well, wait a second. We've never been part of a suite at the baseball game. And most everyone else has never been at a suite at the baseball game. And Jeremy keeps telling me to spend a little bit more money. And it was something like $2,000, $2,500, which is a big cost, but it's a cost they could afford. And they were so excited that they got to do that. And of course, mom or grandma to a lot of people got to be a part of that. And they're going to talk about that forever. Remember that one time we took mom to the Brewers game and we went to the suite, right? That was an expense, but I think well worth it for them.
Exactly. Yeah. Building those memories is priceless when you're retired. And we've started doing that. We started a few years ago before our grandson was born, taking our kids and spouses on big vacations that, sort of larger ones or more elaborate vacations than we typically did. And you're right. The memories you get from that. And it's not just the memories, by the way, it's, we usually plan these things a year in advance. So it's the year of anticipation is as much fun sometimes as the trip and then looking back at the memories.
Yeah, for sure. I got to ask a question though, because I've got one client who does, I don't know if it's every year, but she brings along kids, grandkids on a vacation and she loves it, looks forward to it, spends way more than she ever thought she probably would have. But I think every grandparent spends way more on when grandkids are involved. And there's been a lot of joy, fun out of that. Although she was telling me last time, one of the kids said, hey, where are you taking us next? So there's all of a sudden there's like a bit of entitlement came in, an obligation came in, and that kind of dampened the joy a little bit, I think. I don't know, how do you handle that where you're trying to give and enjoy, but maybe there's some expectations that come with it?
Yeah, I think when you mention that, one of our goals is to give our kids their inheritance while we're still alive and can enjoy watching them, give it to them at a time in their life when it's most meaningful. I'm hoping my kids are about 70 when my wife and I pass away. And I don't know that they'll need or appreciate the money then as they will now when they're in their 20s and 30s. So we're trying to figure that part out. And you're right. You don't want it to become an expectation. You don't want to change their incentive to work hard and to get ahead. So there is a balancing act as to how you do that. And part of it is hopefully you've raised them right and they have the right attitude. But
Mm-hmm.
One idea I have there, Jeremy, is a lot of us are too we don't talk about money in our families.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be considered poor taste to talk about what you have and what your plans are. And a lot of parents don't do that with their kids. And I think we need to get over that hesitancy. I think it's a good idea to bring them in on your plans and to have real conversations about these kinds of issues. Hey, I want to do these things and have fun, and we're willing to pay for them, but that shouldn't affect your life in a negative way. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
if we can have adult conversations with our kids, perhaps with our own parents, if they're still around, I'm sure you've had a number of clients who a parent passes away and they don't know anything about their parent's situation. And that's something I think we all should try to avoid.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes some parents, you get to be 80, 85, 90, and you're thinking, I'm saving this money for the, next generation. And I hear a lot of 6-year-olds saying, I just want mom, to spend it on herself. Right. And you get to be a little bit older. There's maybe ways you can increase your comfort,
Right.
ways you can maybe pay for some medicines that you wouldn't have otherwise. I've seen that before where this medicine's $500 a month. I'm not going to go for it. I'm thinking you make $500 a month in interest. Like, please go for the medicine on there. So, I mean, it's maybe a bit of the saver identity, or I'm going to give this on to the next generation. Hopefully the next generation, I've heard this more often than not, the next generation just wants you to have a better life. They don't need your money.
That's exactly right. When I'm talking to retirees about long-term care and whether they should purchase long-term care insurance, I say, often you're not purchasing it for yourself so much as your kids, because today most long-term care in this country is funded by, it's unpaid and it's performed by family members. And if you don't want to be a burden on your kids, then long-term care insurance might be a good solution for some people.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. There's a quote I read in your article, your chapter in your book. I loved it. It said, when I retired, I wasn't sure my law firm could survive without my brilliance. It seems the legal world continued to revolve without me. So that must have been a blow, a shock, which is all right. You've certainly come through on the other side of that. But I'm curious, how long did it take for you to feel like you got it's like your sea legs? How long did it take you to feel like you got your retirement legs under you?
Yeah, it was probably 6 to 9 months before I in my heart knew I wasn't going to practice law anymore. But you're right, the first week or two, that first Monday, well, why isn't the phone ringing? Why isn't someone coming to me with a problem they need me to solve? And the phone didn't ring. And I was still getting some messages from former clients. Hey, we would like you to help us with a project maybe.
Sure.
And I was toying with it, even though I knew I didn't really want to do that, but it was hard to let that go. And a lot of retirees face that. And not everyone does. A lot of people will continue to do consulting or part-time work after they retire. And that's okay for those folks. But I think it took me about 9 months. I finally got a call. I remember it was in September. I retired in January. And in September, I got a call from a client with what would have been a year earlier, a great project for me to work on. And I said, I'm not doing it anymore. I put my law license on the shelf. So good luck. And that's when I knew, okay, I didn't start talking to them about the project. I was finally in my own mind and in my heart, I had moved on from that part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it took you 6, 9 months. I imagine that's probably somewhat common, where there's this transition to a new identity. I like how in the article you wrote, and I hear this a lot about, it's a new identity for retirement, and maybe there's this influx of who am I in the world. But you remind us that this is not the first time, right? You went off to college, you got married, you had a career, became a parent. I mean, there's a lot of life transitions where you had a new identity. Although all those ones you mentioned, the college, career, marriage, parent, like that's extra stress, and you have a new identity. I think in retirement, it seems like you got less stress, more freedom, and you get this chance to create the identity. It's almost like you maybe have more control. There's hopefully maybe less social pressure or money pressure to create this new identity.
Yeah, you're right. We've done it before, hopefully successfully, as we've taken on new phases of life, and I think that's comforting to people to hear. You mentioned freedom, and I do think the freedom that comes with retirement is unique to this phase of life. You know, when you start a new job, you're not free to live wherever in the country you want to work for most jobs. Mm-hmm. You have to work near your employer. When you get married, you know, it's great to be married, but you lose some freedom, right? You can no longer just do what you want to do. Someone else is involved. Well, when you retire, you and your spouse, if you have one, or partner, if you have one, you get the freedom to decide what you're going to do every day, where you're going to live, who you're going to spend your time with. And you haven't had that freedom during your working career. When you were younger, when you were a child, you know, your parents made most of those decisions for you. For the first time, you have freedom to decide how to structure your life and what it's going to consist of. A lot of people, when they retire, they don't take advantage of those freedoms. You know, they just continue to live the life they've lived before without work. And that's when a lot of retirees fail or become disenchanted with retirement after 6 or 8 months, after that honeymoon phase wears off from retirement, because they become bored. And I think it's because they're just, you know, now they've got that big hole in their days, but they're doing the same things they were doing before, and they need something new. And that's part of why I wrote this chapter on identity and who you'll be in retirement, for people to give some real thought to this. You know, most of us plan for the financial side before we retire, you know, unless we lose our job unexpectedly, which is pretty common, actually. But most of us have done some financial planning and have done very little planning for the non-financial side. And so I talk to people about really exercising these freedoms. Give some real thought. Do you want to, if you've always lived in the suburbs, do you want to move to the city for a few years? The other thing I tell people is you're not making permanent decisions. You know, you can do something, try it out for a few years, and then change it. You can move to a different area of the country. There's just so many freedoms you have in retirement. And that's the best part if you do it. And I continue to find new things in my retirement that gives us joy and satisfaction.
Yeah, it's great. It's good to think that it's not like you're signing a lifetime contract with whatever it is you choose to do this week or this month, and try it out. It's your time to try different things out. Try out that new identity. Well, speaking of freedoms, though, you told me that we need to schedule this podcast recording on a specific day because you're headed out of town. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I've got 2 trips coming up this week. The first, as I mentioned, we're having our annual conference in the Rock Retirement Club. So it's a 2.5-day event, and I'll be doing a couple presentations there. It's just to help people with both the financial and non-financial side of retirement. And also, it's a social gathering of club members. So there'll be about 300 of us, I believe, down in Grapevine, Texas, having fun this weekend. And then my wife and I are leaving immediately the next day with 2 other couples for a trip to Egypt. And that's one of those trips that we didn't have planned. In fact, we did a family trip with our kids earlier this year to South Africa. That was going to be our big trip for 2024. And then these friends asked us, hey, we booked this trip. Our kids can't go. Why don't you guys go with us? So we're heading to Egypt for a couple weeks.
Oh, that's great. Enjoy that. And I'm curious too, because you're part of the Rock Retirement Club. I assume you get paid for your retirement coaching that you do as part of it. It's not volunteer. It's you're enjoying it, but you're also getting some income out of that. It seems this way. Tell me if it's true for you. It feels easier to maybe do a big retirement trip or a big trip like that if the money came out of your working as opposed to out of your portfolio.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when I first started doing this in the club back in 2019, so a year or so after I had retired and had a little money coming in, and it was a little money compared to what I was making as a lawyer, right?
Sure,
It,
right,
it
yeah.
would you would think it was almost an insignificant amount of money, yet when I could identify what I was going to use that money for, and a trip with the kids, a trip with friends, something
Hmm.
specific, you really it gave me a sense of accomplishment. And
Yeah.
so you're exactly right. I tell people a small part-time job, consulting relationship, speaking, writing, whatever is good for you. If you
Hmm.
do that some in retirement and make a little income, it can make all the difference in the world. And especially for retirees who are close to the edge financially. They've
Hmm.
got enough to retire, but they don't have a cushion. Well,
Yeah.
make a little money. Number one, it helps you with this identity and purpose thing that we talk so much about. But two, it creates a fund that you won't be afraid to spend because it wasn't part of your plan to start with.
Yeah, it looks like you get some extra funds, which allows you to have some extra fun, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I got one more question for you, Kevin. Before that, tell me what's the best way to reach out to you?
Probably through the Rock Retirement Club. Kevin Lyles at rockretirementclub.com. Our website is rockretirementclub.com, so you can look that up and see what we're about. But that's where I do most of my coaching. I do some other coaching on the side, but that's the bulk of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, great. I'll put that link in the show notes, the comments on there, so you can check out the Rock Retirement Club. Reach out to Kevin through his email. All right. Final question for you, Kevin. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is rated clean.
I put myself through college, one with a partial scholarship, but two through performing magic. And that was
Okay.
something I started when I was about 13 years old in the basement of our house, having neighbors come over and watch the kid do magic. And I can't believe they suffered through that for me. But then my father was quite the marketer. He started signing me up with gigs, and I started performing magic and made some pretty good money at it for a kid.
Oh, that's great. Any magic shows in the future at the Rock Retirement Club live event?
No, I have not. The last time I performed, I think my kids were about 12 or 13, and they got embarrassed by me at that point. So I
Okay.
pretty much stopped now. Now with this new grandson, I'm hoping to get out some of my magic here in a few years as he starts to have birthday parties.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you got to pick that up. I suppose you've already retired once as a magician, and you retired as a lawyer first, so you had some practice at a time.
Exactly.
Good. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Kevin, sharing your wisdom, especially your 3 tips around how to really discover the new you in retirement, really take the chance to choose who you want to be in retirement.
Thanks, Jeremy. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil, owner of Keil Financial Partners. And if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, make sure to go to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.